physically anymore once that pipe gets built. And these are very serious issues. I'm not saying all goodness is on any one side of these issues. I understand both points of view, but this is probably going to continue to be an issue. And Carlos asks, when are we going to see more diversity, more services, more goodness, and lower prices? And my guess is some of that sort of hinges on how we settle these regulatory debates about whose pipe is it, under what conditions can a competitor get access to it, is it mandatory or is it a business relationship? My sense is most people who own the pipes, who have to pay to put them in, would say, look, I'm willing to give wholesale access to anybody who will pay the price that I ask for those pipes. Don's company will say, well, we can't afford to pay you that. There's no margin for us. And probably you guys priced it that way on purpose. And both of these are legitimate arguments, and I don't think we've actually got it settled. And with this new president coming, I think it's even more settled than it has been. Anybody got any thoughts about that? Because these are serious and totally legitimate issues. You've got serious money, investors' money, riding on how this thing gets settled. And I don't know that there's a nice neutral middle ground on this thing. I mean, part of me says, look, if I'm an investor, it's my capital. I'm not giving you the money unless you give me a return. You can't show me you're going to get a return if there's mandatory access. If I want competition, because I do believe in competition, I also think that probably means there's going to be only non-facilities based competition, which of course raises this other issue of, that's why Google's scary to people. If that's the kind of world we're going to live in and you cannot compete at the pipe level, then we're sure as hell going to compete up here at the application level. So there's part of me says, look, everybody's got to be in the middle somewhere, even though I can't figure out politically how we break the logjam. Or the application providers are going to be forced to, literally, we're going to force them to figure out ways to go around all of our gateways, because they have no other way to continue to be in the application business. Pete, you got any thoughts about that?
Well, I think from our perspective, I mean, really the application side is what we're trying to enable. I mean, we see ourselves today as really no different than the power company. I mean, if you want to make a toaster and plug it in the wall, you can make a toaster and plug it in the wall. So we've really positioned ourselves and really felt that we've steered our vision towards the ability for these guys to build their applications, build their services, solve the real pain that they find out in the marketplace, and build that using the common web tools and so forth that they're used to, just like they'd add Google Maps to an application, can add voice or add transaction services, and try to lift that up high enough so that the enterprises and web developers can go off and do those things and solve their problems. Now that's a different issue than getting down to the pipes and who getting access, but I know we've created all the access methods in our network over the last 10 years to give us a global reach anywhere somebody wants to do that. If it's VoIP or if it's TDM or whatever, it doesn't matter to us. So our perspective, we're already kind of pushing that model. Go build your apps, plug into the power company, plug into us, and we'll make all that technology and all that regulatory underneath work for you. So we're trying to make it that basic if we can.
I may be a contrarian on this, and I'll freely admit I'm a contrarian on this matter, but I have a lot of other friends and analysts who still continue to maintain there's a problem with broadband in the country, and the gist of the argument is people can't get it, or it's too slow, or it's too expensive. And those are the three arguments that people make. So, I'm a market researcher. I go out and I collect these numbers, and I have to tell you, as nearly as I can tell, the supply is not really the problem. To the extent that there's any quote-unquote digital divide in broadband, I don't actually think it's because the supply isn't there. I think the demand isn't there. And the way I get at this, you can play your own spreadsheets on this. If you're going to buy broadband today, you have to have a PC and you have to use the PC, right? I mean, why would you buy a broadband connection if you don't own a PC? So what you have to do is take American households or any households anywhere in the world and back out homes that don't have PCs. Because right now, until we start delivering video services, which is a totally different business, you don't have a need for broadband unless you own a PC. So take those houses out. Then when you do those numbers, homes with PCs and homes with broadband, they're fairly closely matched. I mean, we're pretty close to, I call it saturation. I really think in the consumer market, we're very close to saturation on broadband because people who don't own PCs don't need broadband. That suggests to me that we do not have a supply problem. Now, the other issue is my wife works for a global VSAT company, so that's global customers all over the world, but they've just started satellite operations. So they sell consumer broadband. Their major competitor sells consumer broadband. There's, in most communities, cable and DSL provider at the minimum now. You've got mobile broadband coming in. Again, remember, so you've got 3 providers with 3G networks, which is a partial substitute for some of the value. You've got Clearwire coming online. I frankly need to be convinced that there is any kind of supply problem whatsoever, except the prices may be higher than we like, and the bandwidths may be lower than we like. But the last time I looked, these bandwidths keep getting pushed up almost every 30 days, right? So we have a problem that is fixing itself. And the danger we have, I think, is to cling to the existence of problems which we are fixing, right? And that's, so my contrarian position is, I don't think we have a broadband supply problem. The prices may not be quite what we like, but the bandwidths are also getting up to a range where I think it's a fair value-price relationship. And anybody who wants to argue with me about that, I mean, my friends do all the time. But I just don't see it. People are going,
Well, I think one thing that I would add to that, from the perspective that I know, if you build your application, let me step back. If you look at the way the world's evolved over the last probably 15, 20 years, there's a lot of guys out there who bought a lot of technology back in the 70s or even the early 80s, and they're trying to see how long they can make that last. But there's everybody kind of sitting on this ledge, all waiting for VoIP to be ubiquitous. So that means access is all there. Everybody has broadband. Everybody can do VoIP. Then we can do all these great services. And I feel that there's a lot of hardware providers out there still touting that. There's a lot of people that have whole business models based around that once we're all VoIP, boy, we'll have the whole thing solved. And I don't think from our perspective, you got to deal with both. I mean, our issue was to take as many barriers off the table as possible so that guys that can build the applications and can build the valuable services for the consumer enterprise can go do that, regardless of what they have for technology. And I think, you're right, there's a saturation, but I don't think that you're ever going to get, it's going to be another 10 years to where everybody's truly ubiquitous, where we can go out and do everything in the SIP world.
So Gary, I think that some of the regulating bodies would agree with your conclusion. But the reality is, if you think about multimodal broadband access, the real question then on a microcosm basis, perhaps in Omaha that was raised, it doesn't really work the same. And I think that's the shoe that's yet to drop, is that all technologies are not at this point created equal. And can I use all technologies equally to get like performance through my services? And I think as content and applications and the use of these services continue to evolve, I think we'll find pain points in both the business models and the performance of some of those networks. And I think that's where you'll start to see changes in the price and changes in maybe as kind of a marketing perspective. Maybe I won't sell the same service the way I used to. Maybe then rather than picking your line speed and some assessment of how much you're going to use, it'll be how many packets I deliver to you, which we've already seen start to take place in other parts of the world. So the business model will change, and it'll take you a while to do the math and figure out the prices change too. So I think those are the shoes that are yet to drop.
I would agree with your point with regards to access. We just completed our own study, because every time the OECD releases a report, we get beat up about how we are not doing what we should be doing. And so when you actually back out non-PC households, the dial-up space in Canada represents still only about 9% of the market left. So there's not a lot left. We are at the point where we're at saturation with regards to broadband access. Our own regulator is decidedly facilities-based or has a facilities-based orientation. I think they've looked at the market and decided that they want to try to foster a more facilities-based competition as opposed to non-facilities-based competition. And I think when you look going forward, I think two things happen. One is that I think the market will start to shift, and we'll stop focusing on wireless operators and mobile broadband and wireline operators and household or business-based access, and it'll just be internet, and internet will be facilitated wherever you are, and that you'll have to find a way to be able to deliver IP connectivity to a subscriber no matter where they are. And this fixation on physical location or the method of use will become less important over time. So I think that the market will change that way